to the level of what we're talking about here. Angela Rye, you've been tweeting about this all weekend and saying a lot of things. Express yourself.
Well, where to begin, Rev? To Jones' last point about paternalism here, I think that Big Daddy Sterling over here, the only thing that he's going to really understand is for this to hit him economically. The one thing that we can absolutely learn is the swift action for which the Clippers took. You mentioned the sponsors earlier, from State Farm to Sprint just announced. I think they're the last sponsor to announce today. You know, folks have to hit him economically, and I think when NBA Commissioner Silver sees that this is going to have an economic impact, not just on the Clippers, but on basketball writ large, that's the only thing that they'll understand. I think the one unfortunate thing that we're seeing here, Rev, is the thing that power and influence can really get you. It gets you swift action. We've not seen this same type of thing when racist policies, maybe they're not racist intentionally, but the discriminatory effect of policies that are being passed in the House of Representatives or in state legislatures throughout this country, there's not this type of response. So I hope that one thing that African Americans can do with their $1.1 trillion buying power, and the rest of America collectively can do, is put your money where your mouth is and hold your dollars, know where you're spending, and be very careful about who you choose to support.
And you know, Charles, let me go to something. Sports Illustrated reported about whether the commissioner can force out Donald Sterling. And they say, quote, the NBA Constitution, which is confidential, reportedly contains language permitting owners to authorize the league to sell a team without an owner's consent. And it continues saying the language, quote, only covers very limited circumstances, and these circumstances concern team finances, which could be questionable now with a lot of the sponsors going. What do you hope you see tomorrow from the commission?
Well, from a player's perspective, you've seen a history where players have been fined, banned, and suspended for doing various things. This is the first time you actually have an owner in this situation. The NBA spent a lot of money over the years to train players not to get into situations like this, and this is the first time you have an owner in it. So you would hope that the treatment is fair. You hope that it's a result that satisfies players, the fans, sponsors, everybody at large. But the key here is that this is an owner's decision. This is a commissioner and an owner's decision, and it's something that they have to deal with, and it's something that they're going to have to address and deal with it very quickly.
You know, one of the things that really was noteworthy to me, because I've been in a few of these issues, from Marge Schott to on and on, and is the amount of people other than activists, civil rights activists, that have got involved. All of your major athletes, from LeBron to Michael Jordan. 6 o'clock this morning, marketing magnate Steve Stout called me saying, I want to get the people that advertise through me out of this. Ordinary people are really outraged by this, Joan. And I don't know how the NBA cannot hear all of our voices when you've got so many people that are saying this can't be. The man's son-in-law just came out.
Well, the son-in-law, that is really
the son-in-law is not just a son-in-law. He runs day-to-day operations for the team.
Right. That's a really important turning point, Rev. And I think it's just such a human thing to hear those words and to know that he's talking about some of his players. He's talking about his players' family. Talking about his players' friends, that these are the people who are not welcome at his games, and they're not welcome with his girlfriend. She can associate with other people, but not black people.
They're viewed as the enemy, he said at one point.
Right.
And Angela, I mentioned a short time ago, the alleged statements by Sterling were not the first time the Clippers owner had been accused of bigotry. In 2003, Sterling was sued by 19 tenants of a building he owned, called the Ardmore Apartments. In sworn testimony obtained by ESPN, a former property manager alleges that when Sterling first bought the Ardmore, he remarked on its odor, quote, that's because of all the blacks in this building. They smell. They're not clean, he said. At one point, an elderly black tenant complained about water damage in her apartment. Sterling asks if she's one of those black people that stink. Just evict the expletive. He later settled the case for an undisclosed amount. Angela, how should this pattern play into the NBA's decision tomorrow?
Well, we know that the former NBA commissioner was silent on all of these issues, and I know you mentioned earlier the fact that he had to enter into a settlement agreement with the Department of Justice for housing discrimination. Again, $2.73 million. So this man is no newbie to racism and to discrimination. Again, to that point, there has to be...
He never admitted wrongdoing, but he paid that fine, $2.73.
And that speaks loudly. Money talks, right, Rev? So at the end of the day, the fact that this gentleman continues to discriminate against people of color, whether they play for the Clippers or not, they have to hold him accountable at this point. There is no more room for him in society to treat tenants like that, to treat basic human beings that way, whether American citizens or not, and he doesn't have the right to treat his players this way anymore. There are a number of things that the NBA can do. You think about the NFL's Rooney Rule, the fact that there are all types of proactive steps they've had to take to ensure that people of color have a place and a say. And I think that it's time for the NBA to look at proactive steps that they can take, because they haven't addressed this in the past. This guy has continued to do this because he's been able to plead the affluenza defense even when he's not in the court of law.
Charles, let me go back to you a minute, because there's outrage everywhere. There's concern everywhere. Those in the sports world, though, have to deal with this. You, as an athlete, former active athlete, but always an athlete, you know how hard it is for those players. They're facing the dream of their life, the playoffs, but they've got to get caught up in this. Isn't it fair to the players to make sure these elements are not in position of ownership, that they get caught up in this kind of quagmire? I mean, give me a sense of what you think is going through some of those kids' minds that's got to play tomorrow night, that's got to stand up for what they believe, but at the same time try to win their dreams.
Yeah, when I played for the Clippers during the race riots in L.A., we had to move and play from the arena in L.A. to go to Anaheim. The racial issues were very high in Los Angeles, and we felt it. But it is nothing like what they feel, because this hits home. This is where they work. This is their owner. It is a very tough emotional situation for them. Now, athletes are built to deal with distractions and put things aside when you get on that 94 by 50 feet court and go and play. But this is a little different. This is the owner of the ball club that made direct accusations to them as employees. That's a little tough. And now, if there's any person that can handle this situation, it's Doc Rivers. I play with Doc on 3 different NBA franchises. Doc understands racism. Doc understands players. He understands the business aspect of it, and he has the ability to deal with the players and admit as much as he can on the emotional side to get these guys focused to try to play. And what he's trying to do is say, let's fight back by getting to the championship. It's very difficult to do, but if there's a coach that can get them in that area, it's Doc.
No, you know, I thought about that all weekend as we went through meetings and the concerns about it. But I agree with Angela. A lot of it is going to be where the advertiser, where the money goes, and the other owners go.
Right.
Watch the money. This is not my first rodeo. Watch the money. Right. Joan Walsh, Charles Smith, and Angela Rye, thank you both, all 3, for your time tonight.
Thank you, Rev.
Still ahead, breaking.